Misfits, people ask me all the time about tools that I use in my life and business to maximize my success. I usually start by telling them one of my most powerful tools is my morning habits. And of course, they look at me somewhat confused. I then explain how important it is for me to center myself and how I begin my day and plan for my success. It's critical to consistent high performance. And it doesn't take me long, about 5 or 10 minutes, because I use a great resource called the 5-Minute Journal. The 5-Minute Journal is the simplest, most effective way I've ever found to start your day in the right mindset, doing the right things, and set yourself up for success. And it is exactly what it says, a 5-minute exercise you can do each day. Let me ask you, if you could reach your next level in your life and business by spending just 5 minutes of focused time a day, would you do it? I bet you would. And I know it works because I've experienced the power of it. And you can get your 5-minute journal simply by going to www.misfitentrepreneur.com/journal. That's misfitentrepreneur.com/journal. Do what I do. Use this amazing resource to give yourself an edge in your performance and your success. Get your 5-minute journal today.
Hello, Misfits. This is Dave Lukas, and welcome to another episode of the Misfit Entrepreneur, where it is our job to help you unleash your inner misfit and break through to higher levels of success, wealth, and fulfillment by bringing you the best insight and information from the world's top entrepreneurs, with a specific focus on their misfit side, the specific traits, habits, and secrets that have allowed them to thrive and succeed. As a reminder, if you are new to watching us on our YouTube channel, hit the subscribe button below. Give this video a like and comment as well. We do our best to respond to all comments as timely as possible. This week's Misfit Entrepreneur is David Steele. David is the founder and CEO of One Wealth Advisors, an independent RIA firm with over $1 billion in assets. He's also a restaurateur. He owns 6 different restaurants, a yoga studio owner, a philanthropist, and much more. Needless to say, he's a true misfit entrepreneur to the core. One of the hardest things I think for any entrepreneur to do is to really build and scale multiple business simultaneously and be successful doing it, let alone juggle, all the other areas of life that we have to deal with. So I've asked David to come on to really share how he's done this so successfully and to share his best advice for building a great business. So David, are you ready to unleash your inner misfit?
I'm ready. Let's go.
Awesome. It's great to have you on. And gosh, you've done so much and you've got kind of this incredible resume, but I know you didn't just step into success. So, take 5 minutes or so and just tell us your story. How did you get to where you're at?
I grew up relatively poor, single mother raising 2 kids. She was a school teacher. And so I worked all through high school and college in restaurants, working my way up the restaurant chain. And then I graduated college, didn't want to be poor, so I didn't open a restaurant at that time because I was afraid I couldn't be economically comfortable with being the restaurant
Low margin business, right?
Well, we can get to that later. I'll push back on that a little bit. It's overgeneralization, but I will say it's a hard business, and certainly it does attract sometimes people that aren't really business people, which is part of the problem. But I pursued becoming a financial advisor at 24 out of college, and built the business, I'd like to say, proper way, which is one client at a time, doing the right thing, and sort of slow and steady to the point where, 33 years later, that practice is an overnight success.
It is amazing how much it comes and it rings true over and over again on the show. How the most successful that not only were success, it got success, but stayed there. It's the long game. It's just playing the long game, right? And I think in today's age, it's harder and harder for people to do. We live in that instant world, right? I often say we stop the microwave with 3 seconds left. We can't wait 3 seconds anymore. And so there's the big impatient world that we live in. But for those that are willing to play the long game and stay at it consistently, stay disciplined, persistent with things, it's amazing the success that you can have in just about anything.
Yeah, I mean, it's a shame because the way media works now and the access to information and the way people consume information, what is newsworthy is the seeming radical, rare overnight success stories. Now, I would bet that the majority of these overnight success stories that are written about are many, many, many years in the making, but you don't hear that story. You really hear the story of the overnight success. You don't hear the story about the overnight failure or even the majority of failures of where companies tried to have that hockey stick like short-term return, and in fact they went out basically they
Guns
failed.
blazing.
I don't think that's the right metaphor, but you get my point. They unfortunately there's a lot of trauma from that as well. And so our society now really, I think, celebrates and creates this feeling of envy and FOMO with entrepreneurs, and it does not celebrate building things kind of low and slow. And I wish maybe a show like yours can help with that.
Well, and I agree. And again, like I said, it's a running theme on the show with successful entrepreneurs like yourself, where, you know, it isn't overnight. It is the result of years of hard, steady work and smart work, too. But it pays off. And I think, I think a lot of people end up learning this, sometimes the hard way, right? After a lot of trials and errors and failures, if they stay at it as entrepreneurs. And they finally just realize, like, I got to do the work, and I got to put the time in and do that. Even the unicorns you're in the Bay Area, right? So, even the unicorns you hear about and stuff, like, there's a lot behind the scenes over years that took place to make that company a unicorn, right? And so, even then there's a long game at play. And kind of to that point, we're on the topic, like, what is your formula for building a great business? What are the tenets that you use?
Well, I would always, first of all, I would always steer somebody towards a business as an entrepreneur that has other success stories in the industry. I'm actually not a fan of complete total innovation where you're trying to change, culture or societal behavior. I chose financial planning, which had countless other success stories. I'd like to think that our company has from a creative perspective made it our own, where it's our own way of doing it. But the truth is, there was a playbook for me that had so many people before me, so many companies before me succeed at it, that I was able to take that playbook and just, again, it was one client at a time. And so way back when, I was cold calling and I was dialing the phone 500 times a day looking to speak. I ended up speaking to 70 people, and 10 of them would be qualified. And then eventually I'd go on a certain number of meetings a week and so forth and so on. And so I had a formula that had worked before me, and I just executed on that formula, and I was really, really patient. And then my brother joined me 6 years later, and we were really, really patient. And, now we're a 12-person team with $1.1 billion in assets under management. But it really was one client at a time, executing on that discipline.
Yeah. Hearing you say that too, there's something to be said for copying and innovating. I think you're right. I think, well, in a lot of ways, most everything's already been done, right? I mean, I think, across the board, right? It's just, there are ways to, kind of stay on the shoulders of those before you and go to a new level, which is kind of copying what works and innovating. But there's also, I think it's important to, pick the right vertical to be in, not just today, but like into the future too. Like, wealth is always going to be around. Wealth is always something that people are going to be focused on, and, building that is a key pillar, and it's the biggest game in the world, obviously, playing with in the finance market. So, like, that's something that's a good business because it's always going to be around that, right? It's just how you innovate in it to get to be a $1 billion firm versus somebody who's just, a $50 million firm and can't seem to get over the hump, right? I guess while we're on that, like, what is the difference between that? What's the difference between getting to, like, becoming a $1 billion firm versus, kind of getting stagnated at 50 or 100 million? And we can use this as just a metaphor for generally in business.
Well, we obsess over what our clients want and need, and we don't think about ourselves first or even second or third. It really is focused on what the client wants and need. We get paid fairly for it, not too much, not too little. And if you are really in any business satisfying an inarguable, indisputable need, and there is a history of businesses working, and the industry is not only allowing for one or two of the businesses, but there's lots of them there, and you're patient and you have expectations that are reasonable. Just I have to imagine it's almost impossible to fail in that scenario. But here's the thing: if you have an expectation about how much money you should be making at a certain moment in time of life, a stage of life, age, or if you're comparing yourself to others from a results perspective, you really do run the risk of potentially doing the wrong thing or accepting a type of business that may be inconsistent with your mission and vision for your company. Um, you know, your business will grow how it's supposed to grow, assuming you are doing all of the right inputs and it's a business that has value that in your customers' lives. So, when I do some business consulting, which occasionally I've done, I have this mixing of metaphors, and the metaphor of Sisyphus pushing the boulder up the hill. It's such a negative metaphor, because the way the story is told, Sisyphus, at the end of each day, the boulder rolls down to the bottom, and then the next day he does the same thing, which is really sort of existentially an idea of like the nihilistic nature of life. And I mess with the metaphor and say, yeah, sometimes it rolls back down, but you are Sisyphus and you're pushing the boulder up, and it doesn't roll back to the bottom every day. It sometimes rolls back to the bottom, and sometimes it rolls down a little bit, but it's little by little, it's getting up there. Eventually, you get it to the top, you lean on it, wiping your brow, the boulder rolls down the other side of the hill, you go, oh shit, and you see, oh, there's a field of snow, and it becomes a snowball effect. And I really do think most businesses, whether you're building a brand or you're building a service or sales-based business, once you get that boulder up the hill, word of mouth will spread, and it's going to be a lot easier to grow the business. Our financial planning company grew 32% year over year last year, and we didn't pick up the phone one time to try to get business. So it's a snowball effect now.
Yeah. Yeah. And again, that's part of playing the long game to get to the point where you get that effect. I love the metaphor. I actually use that sometimes too. We're in a little better shape because that was like his punishment. He had to do it every day. And you're right. So I think you're right that once you get to that, you got to hit that kind of, I won't call it critical mass, but it's kind of that inflection point. And once you kind of get through it, and it gets easier too. Like I say a lot of times, entrepreneurship is a series of peaks and valleys, and the peaks are so wonderful, but we spend a lot more time in the valleys than we do the peaks. But it's through going through those valleys to get the next peak where you get better and you get more bulletproof, right? You get used to handling the challenges and problems and issues and things that come with, running an enterprise and building one. And the more of that you can handle and the bigger of that you can handle, the bigger your business will grow. And each kind of peak that you get to, it's like a next level like that. And so kind of a similar thing. I talked about in the opening
I also think
about,
it's important.
Go ahead.
Sorry, I just wanted to say, I think it's important that entrepreneurs maintain modest expectations about their the impact on their financial lives that their entrepreneurial endeavor has. And if they keep it conservative and they're always spending less than they make and staying sort of modest and humble around that, it really does afford you the ability to be more patient and build the business the right way. And so this idea that I said earlier, where people expect by this certain age I should be making this certain amount of money or whatever, and my goodness, we have it in the Bay Area with tech companies and this instant wealth that some people are fortunate enough to experience. But so you have to maintain reasonable expectations about how your job that you're an entrepreneur with and what it's going to pay you. Sure, you got to put food on the table, but anything more than that starts to go to from need to want. And if you are willing to delay gratification on wants and wishes and just focus on need, it lets you build the business the right way, low and slow.
That's a great point, because a lot of times, heck, it happened to me too. A lot of times you will go for many years just like living like that, right? Look, you got a good life, you got enough to cover the bills, do your thing, maybe a little extra you put away and that sort of thing. But then all of a sudden, like, you hit one of those inflection points or critical mass, and all of a sudden it jumps massively. Like in like 1 year's time, it can you can make what you made in the last 5 years doing things right, and still be managing it where you're keeping your expenses low and doing all that stuff, right? You just kind of hit those points. I'm sure that happened to you at some point, right? Where your income was at a certain level, then, you had, like, it just clicked, and all of a sudden it jumped to a whole new level, right? And your whole standard of living changed, like, in a very short time. But it came from all the work that you did in the years before it.
Completely.
Yeah. I mentioned in the opening, and just kind of to this too, because I think one of the issues that especially entrepreneurs starting out have, or even in a business that is gaining traction, is focus. Because once you get, and I deal with this with founders all the time that I either coach or I sit on boards, or even companies that I've taken over and ran. Like, a lot of times, like, once you start to gain that traction, you're throwing off nice cash flow, business is growing well, you've got a good path to success, and you've got your systems, you're operating well, and all that stuff. Then it's like, oh, well, we can go spend money on this, and let's go do this, and let's do this and this and this. And all of a sudden, all the profits being taken for all these extra, shiny object things, and you dilute from everything you're doing if you just stayed focused at that point and kept that, like water dripping on a rock, real consistent, with what's working, and just honing it in, staying good at it, and staying away from that stuff, because your focus is taken away, and most of that stuff doesn't pan out anyways. So, like, to that point, you've got multiple different businesses, different verticals, from restaurants to financial, yoga studios, things like that. How have you managed to maintain the focus to ensure that you are maximizing the potential of these businesses, while you're building them at the same time? It's not an easy feat.
Well, my financial planning company is 383 clients. So I'm both CEO and I'm an advisor to 70 or 80 clients as well. So it's a small company, and that's, let's face it, what we do. And that's how I started. It wasn't running my own company. It was at a regional firm, and I was an advisor. And then we broke away and started our own company. So now I was both CEO and yet still an advisor for people I had really deep relationships with. They're like family. And the process for a financial planning client, what is financial planning? It's setting goals. It's quantifying those goals. It's unpacking why those goals are the goals. Are they the right goals? Are those goals that society says you should have? Are they authentic goals? And that's psychoanalytically rich territory. But we go there, and then we develop a strategy to achieve those goals. By the way, what I just talked about was writing a business plan. It's the same thing. And so when it came to me creating my first restaurant, because I really had an itch I needed to scratch there, I had built the financial planning practice up enough to the point where I could divert some of my time, my attention away, and that I put a team together to open a restaurant. And what did I do? We did a financial plan, goal-based financial plan for this business that was a restaurant. And then what was my role in that first restaurant? To basically be its financial planner going forward. And as we've grown that into now 7 restaurants and a consumer packaged goods business and 250 employees, what is my role? I am a financial planner to the executive team of that company. And they all have their people that they manage in their teams and their process. And so for me, interestingly, being an entrepreneur in all these different endeavors, if you really looked at what I did with my day, I'm actually doing the same thing.
Yeah, it sounds like you were smart, and that you figured out how to stay in your lane and augment around you with the other areas, right? But you had to earn that right with what you did in your planning business to be able to, do the investment and stuff that have to be done to get something like that off the ground, and then obviously bring those partners in. But I think there's a great lesson in there of, like, you can be in multiple different things as long as you're staying focused on the same type of work in those things, right? And doing what you know and staying in your lane that way. So I think that's I mean, that little thing is one of the most important things anybody watching, listening, you can take from this as you move on your journey in entrepreneurship. In fact, it's a great place. I want to come back. I want to talk a little bit more about leadership and then about, some of these other areas of the business with you and some of your advice for entrepreneurs. We're going to do a 1-minute break. We'll be right back and we'll get into that.
Misfit Entrepreneurs, I want to tell you about an amazing resource that will have tremendous impact on your business and your revenue. I have used this solution in multiple businesses and it has made an incredible difference. Let me start by asking you something. Do you know how much it costs your business when just one salesperson doesn't step up to deliver? Do you really know? The cost can easily exceed 6 figures for just one bad hire, not just from the time, effort, and resources in hiring them, but from the lost business and downtime as well, as you have to go find a new salesperson and everything surrounding that. And the last thing any growing business can afford is to have a failed hire, especially in sales, the revenue driver for the company. But what if there was a way to know someone checked all the boxes of a great sales hunter and closer before you ever hired them? That's the solution that I found from a company called Sales Drive. They have created a solution called Drive Test. It's a powerful hiring tool that separates high-performance salespeople from pretenders by measuring the most critical personality trait needed for success in sales: drive. Drive is composed of 3 non-teachable traits shared by all top producers: the need for achievement, competitiveness, and optimism. And knowing who has drive before the interview dramatically increases your chances of selecting salespeople who will produce for you while avoiding those costly bad hires. I've used the solution and it works. In fact, it works so well, I've referred them to every company that I work with. And they've created a very special offer so that you can try them for free as well. You can get a free drive test assessment today at www.misfitentrepreneur.com/sales drive. That's misfitentrepreneur.com/sales drive, all one word. Start using the drive test in your hiring and never hire a bad salesperson again.
Okay, so David, before the break, we were talking about how what you figured out to do was to be able to work in multiple businesses, as long as you could stay really focused on the same type of work, what you knew, right, staying in your lane, that allowed you to be very effective across that. Have you found, aside from that too, because even if you're, doing, that work, you still are the CEO, you're still leading, you're still, people are looking to you for direction. So like what leadership principles have you found most critical to help your success in managing across those multiple businesses as well?
Well, as you grow, you probably want to have some organizing principle of the company. And so for my businesses, we use OKRs, which I think was created by the original CEO of Intel, if I'm not mistaken. And that's our organizing process template, if you will, for how we organize my different businesses. And so as CEO of my financial planning company, One Wealth Advisors, that's what we use. We create 5 objectives each year. We put a leader onto those objectives. We come together in our annual planning process to what the key results by which those objectives will be measured, whether they're successful or not. And then what you can do is you scale an organization. You can then have each division leader use OKRs also for their division. And so that's a way for me to have looked at each of the businesses that are seemingly unrelated to each other, whereas I look at my role as a financial planner for the business as we create the business, as we create the company, but then I organize the companies in the same way as well.
Yeah, that makes sense. I think if I'm right, it's Andy Grove, right? I think with
It is Andy Grove,
OKRs,
yeah.
right? Yeah. So, great book by him, by the way. If you ever get a chance to, it's on leadership and management. Those watching, listening, pick it up. He's, was like I don't know, he's kind of like a god in Silicon Valley, right?
He is a god.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. So, as I think about this too, I wonder, like, and I talk about this a lot because for me, my routine is very important. Structure to me actually is how I get freedom. Believe it or not, it sounds weird, but for me, running the businesses that I run, doing the different endeavors that I have, in addition to training for, I'm pretty highly competitive in Ironman, go to the world championships and all that. Actually coming up, I'm leaving for the world championships. And the thing that I found is having a really good structure, like I plan out my weeks, I plan out my days, I have consistency of like with my teams of when I'm available, when I'm not throughout the week, and all that has really helped me to be exponentially more effective. Gotten me the freedom, because the way I plan things is I tell people when I'm available, the rest of the time is my time, right? So those are the times that I'm available, or the times that we're working on stuff, right? So it trains people of when I'm, most effective for them and most effective in the business, and I'm not getting like pulled into things left and right all the time, right? I'm curious, habits, routines, things that have been instrumental for you in really sustaining your productivity, your focus, and everything over the years.
Yeah, I mean, I'm an athlete as well. I'm a former mountain bike racer and road bike racer, and I still probably am on my mountain bike 200 days a year. So we should go on a ride together sometime.
There you go. Yeah.
But time blocking is kind of a big deal. For me, I don't let anybody else manage my calendar, which people find interesting. For me, the managing of my calendar is one of my most valuable things I can do. And there's an art and science to managing the calendar. And I prioritize. I think that there are some core areas of life. First of all, I think our purpose on this planet is to be happy, full stop. That's my view. That should be, I believe that is my goal, and I would wish that to be everybody's goal. And the ways we can be happy are to make sure we're well fed, and we're nourished, and we're warm and dry, but also loved and valued. And how can we do those things? Well, every day should be involved in that, which is I time block sleep, I time block when I'm going to dinner and with who I'm going to dinner. It's on my calendar. I time block 2 hours a day of exercise. It's on the calendar. I orient my day. I'm a big snowboarder in the winter. I reorient my meetings in my day around making sure that from 9 a.m. until 1 p.m. I don't have meetings in the winter. And so if you look to my calendar, people that have a peek at it think I'm insane because every half hour is time blocked. But for me, it's a way of making sure I'm attending to all of these critical components of happiness in life: body, mind, soul, family, love, friends, money. All of this stuff is an everyday practice.
You're a man after my own heart. I do a lot of the same thing. So it's, and it does work. I'm telling you, for those out there, you got to take the control back. If you're an entrepreneur, you're building a business, you're a leader, running a team, whatever, like if you don't train your team on when you're available, or train those that you work with, or set your time aside, it's just going to get taken. Like if people have access to your calendar and there's a free spot, it's going to get taken. Like, so, I mean, for me, I do the same thing. I block out, like, here's my time for this. Here's my time for this. This time, not available. This time, not available. From here to here. Like, they're like the snowboarding or whatever. There are days where I have to train for 3 or 4 hours before the day begins. And I'll start at 4 or 5 in the morning, but that may take me to 9 or 10 in the morning. Right. So, hey, it's blocked out. Not available then, right? And then consistency of things too, though. There are the core things you got to do in your business, and the key things, key people that you need to work with on a weekly basis. So I find one-to-one's consistent every single week at the same time, right? Things like that are really important for the continuity of it. And then empowering people and letting them go to be their best and do it. I think, that's the other side of it for me, is just like getting those key people, and then, giving them that ability to just run and do that. And, if there's an emergency, there's a way to get a hold of you, but hey, we'll talk about it in our one-on-one next week, otherwise, right? Run it, right? I sense that you're similar in how you run things.
Yeah. And I see it all the time. I actually have 2 restaurant companies, believe it or not, because I live in Lake Tahoe part-time, and I wanted food up there to be better than my perception of it was. And so I moved a chef from San Francisco to Tahoe, and we actually started a second restaurant company. We've got 2 restaurants up there. And it's really interesting to watch, because I spent 15 years coaching my CEO of my first restaurant company, that's very, very successful, the one I talked about earlier. And I'm seeing the work I'm doing now with who is the chef and now CEO of this young 2 restaurant company. And what I'm finding is, I call it the disease of non-scalability, which is the following statement: if you want something done right, do it yourself. It's the most narcissistic thing anybody can ever possibly say. And in fact, it hurts you so much because you will continue to be doing all the busy work. And when you're doing all the busy work, you're not, in fact, empowering somebody who isn't not yet ready to do the work that requires more mastery and wisdom, but you're beginning to plant those seeds with them to train them, to get them to eventually have mastery and have wisdom, to be able to delegate and elevate themselves. And so I find these younger CEOs begin to accept this idea that they need to delegate. But here's the problem. I see it all the time. They delegate, and then 6 weeks go by, and they wonder why the person screwed it up. And so the delegation requires coaching, nurturing, quality controlling. And so if you want to delegate out a critical component of your company's business, my goodness, meet with that person once a week, have KPIs or some type of objectives that they're tracking, positively reinforce them. And in fact, they may not be as good as you wish they were naturally. And that doesn't mean they should be fired or they're not appropriate for the job. It just means if you know them, you know they're the devil and work around their weaknesses and coach them and nurture them on their weaknesses. Don't expect them to be somebody different than they are. And if they're going to be different, it's not going to be overnight. It's going to take time.
Oh, can't agree with you more on that. And you said a number of things in there. I mean, positive reinforcement versus negative reinforcement, such a difference in the impact that it has. The other thing too, and this is, I think this is the hardest thing. It's funny. We always called it the Midwest mentality. I'm from the Midwest. You want something done right, do it yourself. But they're not going to do it at the way you're going to do it. They're not going to do it maybe at the level that you would do it. They may never be able to. And then you may find somebody that does it better. And that's great when you do. But here's the thing. It gets done. And in the end, the result matters, right? And so they may not do it exactly how you would do it or in a way that you would want it necessarily done, but they do arrive at the result that pushes things forward. As long as they do it, with the ethics and the integrity and everything that you need. But that's the hardest thing I think for entrepreneurs to let go of is, they, like you said, they'll delegate, but then they'll spider monkey people with the delegation, right? It's the opposite of letting go. Right. 6 weeks go by, they'll micromanage the whole thing.
Micromanage. That's it. I was going to say, that's like, it's like, there's a big difference between micromanaging and coaching, consistent coaching. Consistent coaching, great. Micromanaging, no.
Exactly. And like there's a fine line because what people, a lot of leaders will be like, okay, I'm going to give you look, you know what? You're going to own this. You're going to do this. I'm ceding it to you, congratulations, you're promoted, whatever. But then they don't give them that chance. They micromanage. Or they use negative reinforcement when maybe they don't do things the exact way that they would have done, right? And it becomes a bad scene because it's like the snowball running down the hill in the bad way, right? And so there's really that finesse of how to do that. And I'm curious, is there any resources that you found, like books that you've read or maybe things that you think help people that are maybe at that point, right? Because that's a key point in your development as a leader, as an entrepreneur.
Yeah, there's actually a book I'm reading right now that I can recommend. It's called Traction.
Mm-hmm. Gino Wickman?
Maybe you can. Yeah, I think that's right. And it's I think it's really great for this. It really is like a comprehensive entrepreneur entrepreneur playbook, if you will. And it talks a lot about leadership and how to lead with actual physical processes. I mean, you have templates by which they give you where you can have certain number of meetings in a certain period of time, depending upon the person and the role, and how to write up roles and responsibilities structurally. So I'm a big fan. I mean, but I mentioned earlier OKRs. I just like any type of structure. I don't care if it's OKRs. There's all kinds of templates out there for you to organize your business, and you should use some type of template to organize how you're a leader. And you should be prioritizing your leadership. I mean, if you're a big company, there's no way you're going to be able to give the same type of attention to people that are lower down the totem pole. And so you really do have to be realistic and judicious about what you're spending, who you're spending your time with, and teach those people to spend their time with the people that are their direct reports and that are the leaders that they're nurturing. Again, it's a scalable system.
Yeah, it's great points all around. And yeah, Gino's been on the show actually. And it's part of that structure too, for those that are out there, if you're looking for kind of like a base business operating system, Gino invented EOS, which is used by half a million business. I use it in businesses and stuff because it's a great proven structure you can implement. And Traction's like the next iteration, like after you like implement EOS, it's like the next portion of that. They kind of go hand to hand. But it's true, like, because you got to set it up, but then you got to lead it, right? And you got to work through it. And you have to grow as a leader. Like, most people, they have some natural tendencies and stuff, but it's like anything. You have to work the muscle and get better at it and get better at it. I was a terrible leader when I first started because I was really good on my own and highly successful. No, I was really good on my own and highly successful. And it became, well, do it my way because I was successful. And so you got to do it like I did. Right. And that, wasn't great for building a team because you try to make everybody you. It's not good. They're not you and they're never going to be you. They got to be them. You just got to help empower them and put them in that position to be their best. So go ahead.
Well, what's interesting about this Traction book, and we're giving him a lot of attention, so to the extent that he's going to sell some copies, good for him. But
yeah, maybe
it makes me think of when you said earlier about letting go of the sort of, I think, agency and equity and what the decision, right? So you don't micromanage the person you're trying to lead. The reason I'm reading Traction is because the chef I mentioned in my restaurant company in Tahoe, that now has 2 restaurants with more on the way, who we're really grooming him, nurturing him to be a true CEO and be more executive functioning, less like a chef functioning. The OKR thing didn't stick for him. And so he was very curious about different methodologies. It just didn't work for him. And so that's why we're using Traction. The point I'm making is I'm learning about Traction because I didn't, in an overbearing way, say, no, we're using OKRs. This is one of my companies I started.
Mm-hmm.
I was like, dude, good for you. Like you went up there, and who knows, maybe we'll change from OKRs to the Traction EOS method for the other businesses.
Yeah, people support what they help to
example
create.
Of me not trying to yeah.
But go ahead. You were saying that you try not to.
No, I was just I think I insisted upon structure, strategic planning process. Chef Brandon, the CEO Brandon, didn't want OKRs, but I insisted upon structure. He came up with, for him, a better structure. Great.
Awesome. Exactly. And that's why that's a perfect example of empowering somebody, right? The result in the end is going to be still good and everything, but they may not arrive the same way that you would have done. And that's the hardest thing for entrepreneurs to let go of. But if you can, man, your business can grow and do really, really well. Last question before we get to your Misfit 3. You mentioned it a couple times. You mentioned, obviously, how big you're into mountain biking, snowboarding. I've skied since I was a kid and I used to compete and everything. So I'm right there with you when it comes to the winter sports side. What have you learned from doing those sports that have helped you succeed in business? What are some good lessons you've taken away?
Well, I mean, one of the obvious ones that anybody could probably relate to is the need to have fun with a sport, let alone be competitive with a sport. It's not the competition, it's the practice, if you will. It's the hourly, daily, weekly, monthly, quarterly, annual behaviors that afford you the ability to perform at a high level. And again, I'm not talking about being a competitive athlete. I wasn't a very good competitive athlete. My sense is you're probably a better one than I am. But but I was good enough. But the point is, I love the practice. I love the discipline, and that translates to me perfectly for business, and for it. It translates to nurturing relationships with friendships. I mean, it's not if you see somebody every 3 years, the friendship is going to wane. If you do little bits along the way, you water the plant, if you will, consistently, it's gonna be strong. But the other thing is internal peace of mind and happiness. And exercise, I'm completely convinced, releases dopamine and maybe serotonin in your brain. It allows you, if you consistently exercise, I think you present in all relationships, not just business, as a sort of more consistent, calm person.
No, I think you're right. There are so many parallels to sport and obviously the sport of business too, in that sense. And that's, great points, great way to end it before we get to your Misfit 3. And we're going to do that. We're going to take just one more 1-minute break, and we're going to come back with David's Misfit 3.
Before we get into today's Misfit 3, I want to take a minute to talk to you about a free resource available to you from the Misfit Entrepreneur, the Misfit Minute. The Misfit Minute is the free weekly resource packed with useful tips, tricks, and information from the world of Misfit entrepreneurs. It not only includes further resources on the week's Misfit Entrepreneur guest, but additional links, articles, and resources to help you be more successful. It's delivered every Friday to your inbox. To sign up, all you have to do is go to the homepage at www.misfitentrepreneur.com, and you will see the Misfit Minute sign-up page. Don't miss out on this great resource and all it has to help you. Sign up today and look for it this Friday.
Okay, it's time for David's Misfit 3. These are the 3 things that he wants you to take that you can put in your business, your life, make a difference for yourself starting today. And the way that I always frame this to every guest that comes on the show is I say, hey, look, if you were going to leave this earth tomorrow, and you can only leave behind your 3 best pieces of wisdom to the generations that come after you to really help them live their best life, like what are those 3 things? So, David, what are your Misfit 3?
My first would be to celebrate input, not output, or really focus on the process rather than the results. I'm not too concerned with wins and losses. I am concerned with, did I do what I was supposed to do every day? And if I did, I celebrated that result. I did the action, and whatever comes of it, so be it. I trust that I have faith that it will ultimately be more good than bad. And the second is, I believe happiness is when your reality exceeds expectations. And the way to manage that is to really focus and control your expectations. I'm not saying we should not have good goals, great goals, hard to achieve goals maybe, but have reasonable expectations as you go through life. And then the third one is the one I feel most strongly about. It's always people. Everything is people. Everything is in the service of others, because that is always in the service of yourself as well.
Excellent, Misfit 3. I love all those. That last one's really, I think, timeless in that sense. They all are in that, but I think that's a great message. If people do want to learn more about you, where should they go?
I have a bunch of different businesses, so there's websites for each, but I created a catch-all website, davidsteele.xyz, DAVIDSTEELE, davidsteele.xyz. That sort of does its best to show all of my stuff and maybe even see how it relates to each other.
Perfect. We'll link to that in the show notes, the best show notes in the business for reasons I will talk about more in a second. But first, for those of you that are new to the Misfit Entrepreneur, it's your first episode with us, welcome. It's such an honor to have you with us. I hope you become a regular listener and subscriber. And for those of you that are with us week in and week out, I cannot thank you enough for your support of the show. You are what makes this go every single week in over 100 countries. So thank you, thank you, thank you. And make sure to go out and check out the show notes for the episode. They are the best in the business. Why? Because I do them myself. I actually go back through as part of my personal growth routine, my, structure and everything each week. And I go back through these episodes and I take my best pieces of wisdom, the insights, key points I'm taking away, and I share those with you. So go check those out. And then go out and give this episode a rating and review. Help share David's message, because we all know, and I say this in every episode, one great episode can change someone's life. Maybe something that David shared today was that missing link you were looking for to get to your next level. So share this with others. And again, David, thank you so much for coming on, sharing all your wisdom and insight.
Thanks for having me. I'll come back anytime.